Now comes the challenging task of getting this back window in. So I'll call a D window. This one here goes in the hole. These holes here are for screwing the window into the wooden frame behind, and when you put this in, there's actually a rubber seal that goes around there. Now, the rubber seal has a profile like that, but the way it's put in is not the way you'd first think. When I looked at this, I looked at that and said, okay, well, that's the outside of the seal, and it will go down onto that and somehow squash in. But the problem is that the width of this rubber on the inside is actually, there it is, it's sitting on the wooden panel inside. It is much longer than the gap on the inside. So what I actually found out was that the way the rubber goes on is not with that to the outside, but with this one here, this side to the outside. So you've got the rubber's angled up that way, but what it does is that rubber sits down on the wooden rebate on the inside. Then you have to push the window in, and when you push that window in, this folds down, and it folds down and makes a seal under the body. Now, it looks easier than it is, because what you have to do is, first of all, is to tack the rubber on and then force the window in so it pushes that rubber down, and it's going to be quite a challenge. I can't see this going in easily. To assist it, what I will probably do, just see that there, you can see that's the depth of the rebate, and this has to fold that rubber around and then eventually end up with the rubber sealing against the chrome. So it's really got to double up on the inside. So what I'm going to do is to put a bit of rubber grease onto the window frame, and hopefully that'll help the window slide in. But even with that, I can see it's going to be very difficult to be compressing that in and at the same time trying to locate screws through the holes in the frame into the wood. So it's not going to go in easy. Like many things that I've left till last, this one is probably the most difficult to get into place. So anyway, I'll think a bit more about how it's going to go in and how I'm actually going to fold that rubber down and at the same time screw that frame in. So a fair bit of work to do yet on it. The other thing I have to do is to fix this in place. I've got some screws to go into the frame here, but that frame is actually meant to be flush with the doorway here, which it's not. Now I did manage to find how they solved that problem. I actually took this window off what they did, they actually used a piece of thin wood to make up the difference. So that was an assembly defect at the Daimler factory. So they put a sliver of wood in there which built that out, can't get it in at the moment, but it built that out so it provided the right gap between the window frame on the door and this post. So there's a few difficulties to resolve in getting this in, but anyway, I'll start by trying to tack this rubber in and then work out how I'm going to compress the rubber between the window frame and the body. So it'd be nice if we just put a very large clamp onto the outside of the car, but certainly that's not possible. Well, I don't know how this window rubber is going to go. I've started tacking it along all the way around. As you can see there, it's not fully tacked in yet. I wanted to get it in position, and then you actually have to cut it. So I've cut it down the bottom here. Now the rubber, as I explained, you can see it there, sits above the body and it relies on the window to push that lip down onto the body. So this is going to be the challenge. I'll just hop back in the car. The challenge is going to be putting the window in and then trying to push the window towards the outside of the car, and in so doing push that lip over. I don't expect it's going to go easily. In fact, I'm just a bit concerned it's not going to go at all, but that's the only way I can think of doing it. What I will be doing when I've finished tacking these in place fully is that I've got some rubber grease, and I'll put rubber grease all the way along under this lip, so when the window is forcing against it, it's got something to slip on, and hopefully that will make it a little bit easier. If I don't do that, I imagine the chrome is going to have a lot of difficulty sliding, or actually bending and sliding over the folded rubber. But at least with a bit of lubrication, and in this case I was going to use rubber grease. Maybe I could use detergent. I'll think about that, but certainly a lubricant to put it on that, and then I can hook the window in this end, because it sits behind this bracket here, and there's a chrome bracket I've put on the outside, so it sits in there, and then I'll have to start by folding those lips up so I can get the window to actually sit in the right position, and then I've got to probably force it in from this end, so close the window that way, and it'll pivot around this point, hopefully. As I said, I'll put this chrome strip on the outside. I've actually, with those screws, the ones I had were basically butchered, so they were no good. Rather than find the right thread for these screws, probably a whipper thread, I've just tapped them out to 5mm and just bought some 5mm stainless steel bolts, which will go in there nicely. So I've already tapped these, re-tapped them. They're all 5mm up there. So apart from that, wishful thinking means that this is going to go in, not easily, but gradually. But I'll wait and see. Now I've put a coating of rubber grease all around the edge of the rubber there. As I said, that's got to fold over and down, and the metal's got to go in behind it, so it's all in. I've even put some on the, a bit hard to see here, on the edge of the frame, just to make sure it'll slip. Now it's either going to work or it's not, but I'll try and put it in now and just see how it goes. I can't film it because I'm on my own at the moment. Whether I can do this on my own, I'm not sure, but I'll give it a go. Now I'd love to say this is easy to get in, but it's not. I've spent half an hour so far. The bottom is coming in a bit. It's pushed in fine at this end, but it's still got to come in on the rear end there. Now what I've been doing, and I've been doing it on my own, I'm surprised that I've been able to get so far, is that I've been clamping it, and you can see up here I've clamped it, pushed it in, and then put the clamp on to stop it from pushing back out again, because that's what it's doing with the pressure of the rubber. But as I say, I've got more to go in at the rear here, so I'll keep applying pressure and then releasing the clamps and then tightening them up again. So I don't want to try and pull it in with the screws because of the likelihood of it just ripping out of the timber. So I'll just keep persisting. As I say, half an hour so far. It's gone better than I'd hoped, but still, it's not easy. Right, all up, took an hour to get in. It is in place. It is difficult to do. And the problem is getting this seal to fold over properly. It tends to want to catch on this upper edge as you're trying to put it in. So anyway, so slow and steady, it eventually gets in. The rubber grease worked well, and I'm glad I won't have to put that one in again, but unfortunately I've got to put the other side in, so I've got to now go and prepare the timber on the inside and then repeat this process. Okay, back inside the car. Sound is not good, not helped by the rain falling on the roof, but anyway, I'm working on the timber. I didn't show this on the other side, but what happens, well, certainly with this car, is that where the window frame screws into the wood, it tends to rot. So what I've been doing is cutting it's a dry rot. I cut the dry rot out with a chisel, and it's pretty much all of the location points for the window that are gone, and including the whole corner section here. So what I've got to do is to make up wooden inserts. I'm just working on these top ones to start with, and fashioning wooden inserts to go in those holes, and then I'll glue them in to provide a solid fixing point for the window frame. Across the bottom here, even these small holes here, that's a fixing hole, and that one. You'll find that when you try to put a screw in there, that'll just tear the timber out and won't hold. So all of those holes have got to be filled. There's another one there. At least these ones aren't rotted around on the outside, but certainly they won't hold a screw properly. So I've got a fair bit of work to do on that. But anyway, I'll continue on and show you the progress. Well, I've got most of the holes plugged up. A few I've still got to do. Just I'll do those with little pegs. They've just been knocked in. I've glued them, but I'll have to wait probably at least 24 hours before I can trim them off. Lots of little extra pegs to fill up little gaps. I've plugged these ones, some of these, certainly that one and that one, for the window frame. So I've just been plugging those holes up as well. A couple more to do, probably one there, but it's getting close. I won't do those until I do this corner section, so that's the largest piece, and that's the next one I'll address. The repairs to the timber are now complete. The last pieces I've put in are these two. Took quite a while to shape and fit in, so it should be worth it. The glue needs to go off. I'll leave at least a couple of days for the glue to harden, and then I've got to trim these back. This is a little bit oversized, it's sticking out this way a bit too far, so I've got to trim that back, and obviously I've got to take all these pegs I've got in screw holes and finish those flush with the wooden surface as well. Those ones there seem to be fine, so all in all it's almost complete. The finishing off, of course, I've got to smooth the wooden surface so the window frame's got something flat to go against, and I'll seal it with some paint. But all in all, it's worked out quite well. The time taken is, well, like all preparation, finishing a job off is usually the shortest part. Even though the window took an hour to put in, that is by far the shortest piece of work involved. Getting the timber right, it's probably taken me so far about 6 hours. There's a lot of work getting in and out of the car. So what I do with these, I cut them to the broad shape first, then I try and fit, then I mark where it's too oversized, then I get out of the car, over to the linisher and trim it down, then back in the car and refit, and then mark again, and then out of the car, so you're in and out. It's a long process, but if you don't take the time preparing, it won't work well in the end. So anyway, it's nearing completion. There's still probably at least an hour's work trimming these up. You can't go into it too heavy with a chisel, knocking these pieces off, otherwise you can damage too much, so the time, as I say, is worth it in the end. The timber's now all been finished. I've just put a coating of paint on it just to seal it, but it's ready now for the rubber to be tacked in place. This side has proven a little bit harder to get in. I couldn't push it in just by hand. I've actually had to use a lever to the other side of the car. I didn't go too heavy on it, just to slide it down, and just provided the additional force I needed to push the rubber out. The problem when you're sitting in the car, I've been sitting in the seat sort of facing the front of the car and then leaning sideways and trying to push. You don't have a lot of leverage. So this one, I've used the extra leverage just to push that in. The rubber is now tight on the outside, and I'll start to screw the window frame into place. Alright, the second D window is now in place. I haven't removed the positioning pieces yet, but I'll do that in a minute. A little bit harder than the last one. the rubber was a little bit hard to compress in. One thing to be wary of if you're doing replacing these is that there's a fair degree of tension when you're pushing that window in, so it's wanting to push back out. So what I'm getting at is that if your timber is not good, the screws will just rip out of the wood. And on these older cars like this, the original screws were steel. They, over time, 70 odd years, start to rust in the wood, and the wood starts to rot. So your timber has to be good. So you need to pay attention to that if you're going to put these in. Otherwise you'll get to the stage of tacking the rubber on and then trying to put the screws in. They'll just push the screws out of the timber. So just a word of warning.